My dear viewers, very warm welcome to Conversations with the Career Doctor. This is your friendly podcast in which you're going to learn how to quell those little pesky irritants of your career, how to strengthen it, how to build a very robust engagement with your workplace and your work life, and enjoy the whole process. In today's episode, we have with us Swati Rustagi, Vice President Employee Experience with Adobe. Swati, very, very warm welcome to the show. Thank you so much for making it. And here's looking forward to all those secrets that make your career such a robust one. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's my privilege.
Thank you, Swati. So, Swati, I was just going through your background, and it's incredible to see the kind of journey that you've had. From someone who comes from a family that started off with being from a low socioeconomic background, to somebody who today has really breached several ceilings, the so-called glass ceilings, and come to a level where today you are the voice of many, many thousands of women professionals like you. It's an incredible experience, and it was very motivating to, hear about your journey. Could you share with our viewers a little bit about your background and, the whole thing of how you, grew up and where you studied, and then, what has brought you today to be the Vice President Employee Experience at Adobe? Over to you, Swati.
Thank you. Now when I sit down and sometimes think about where I started and where I am, the first thing that comes to my mind is gratitude, luck, and privilege, because I'm very, very cognizant, as I have met with a lot of people throughout my career, that there are many, many people who work very hard at achieving things, and a few are blessed or are at the right place at the right time. And I think I've had that privilege. I've also had a ton of sponsors and supporters and cheerleaders throughout my journey. And I'm really blessed to have them in my life because, again, I don't think it is an individual, achievement to be where you are in your life. There are many people who are just sent at the right times to support you. And that's been my life. I grew up in Mumbai. And yes, I came from a background which was challenged financially, but not challenged in terms of a mindset. And I think that was probably the biggest advantage I had in my life. Very early in my life, I realized that education was the only way up. And if I had to change my circumstances, and I can keep talking about a lot about how difficult things were or what financial challenges we had. But honestly, that's not relevant. This is India, and there are many, many people with many, many challenge situations. And I think what stood out for me in my background was the fact that my family was very clear that education was important, and that was a leveler, and that it could take me places, and that they would be very supportive of anything I needed to do for that, which included, for example, doing extraordinary things like going out very early in life, to work with NGOs or to travel. It was not heard of in the kind of background that I came from for a girl at 14, 15 to be going to all kinds of places. And I remember sometimes my own, extended family members sometimes questioning my parents saying, hey, what are you doing? You're sending a girl to all these kinds of places, traveling alone. I went to Assam by the Dibrugarh Express when I was all of 17 years old. And you know how that train is. It starts at Dadar at some point of time and reaches Dibrugarh at some point of time. And I was there, with few colleagues, but not necessarily family, friends or anything like that. So I think that exposure helped a lot. And I'm thankful that I had that privilege and I could, build it. I think one of the biggest support systems I have even today is what I call as my network of girlfriends. They are the best support that I have, whether it's family or whether it is at workplace, colleagues, friends, people who deeply understand and are supportive of what I want to do.
Swati, that was amazing. I just loved how you summed up everything. But, you had me at the first word you spoke, which was gratitude. I think, for all of us to be truly successful, and more than anything, to have the resilience to face all the curveballs that life throws at us, I think we should begin with a position of deep gratitude, feeling very happy for what blessings we've already received so that we're able to attract more. I have a few questions to ask of you. You took a maternity break which extended, if I'm right. How did you deal with what we very popularly call mommy's guilt? How did you deal with that?
Well, the reason I took a maternity break, which was long, was less to do with guilt and more to do with the situation I was in. Because I had my boys when I was 40, and they came very premature, so they were in the NICU for the longest time, and we honestly didn't know which way it was going. So in that kind of scenario, at that time, I was the CHRO of a really awesome firm and worked with a really great leader called Glenn Saldana. And I used to work with Glenn Mark. And the role was global in nature. And it would just have been inappropriate to continue because I knew I would not be able to give it the kind of time that it needs or the travel that it needs. I was completely in a different place mentally. I needed to be there to make sure what was happening with my children and my family. My husband was based in London. There was a lot of stuff going on. So I just decided that it was important for me to switch off and just be focused on probably the most important goal of my life, which is to get my children on a normal growth curve. I will also say it was one of the hardest decisions for me personally, and I will not pretend that it was all roses and I did it out of this great sense of love and duty and then it was all nice. It was hard. It was incredibly hard. Um, and I think it was really people around me and some really strong women around me. So, sometimes help comes from strange quarters. And I remember one aunt of mine saying that I understand that, when at the age of 15 you start working and you're out and you're doing stuff, then at the age of 40 to suddenly be at home, you start asking yourself some very difficult questions. So just be in the moment, don't think too much. Things will work out. I remember lots of my friends, like I say, my network of girlfriends, really stepping in to be there for me emotionally. It was a very hard time. You start to question a lot of things, right? Saying, did I do the right thing? Should I even have had kids? I was right at the pinnacle of my career. Should I have stepped away at this point of time? 40 is a hard time to step away, just about reaching that point where, things get accelerated. So I was like, what did I do? Right. And it was hard. But with all of the support that I had, all of the friends that I had around me, it became easier by the day. And like I say, I do not pretend motherhood is easy. I love all those movie scenes where you see a baby and the mother goes on like, oh, this is God's gift. It is not like that. And I just want to make it very real for all mothers out out there saying, I hope many of you feel like that, but I also recognize that many of us go through these feelings of saying, okay, what have I done? What am I going to do now? So I did go through that. But I did, like I said, really strong support system, which helped me figure out what I wanted to do. And I used that time well, even while I was, being a mother. And once the kids were brought back home, I could spend some time focusing on my coaching certification. I was able to do some, other stuff, which was read up on stuff I had not read up for a long time. So it was useful. And it also helped me explore. I think that break also helped me explore who I was becoming. It was a great time for me to reflect and think, saying, sometimes you struggle so hard to get somewhere that this break kind of helps you think that you don't really need to struggle anymore. You've kind of reached a point where there is this mindset of abundance now. You don't really need to think like you have to do these things and win something or stuff like that. So I think that was a very helpful break for me
Super.
in all considered.
Super. I actually am going to go back to the guilt part. I love the fact that you said it was not, guilt, but more out of the fact that, the children were in NICU and they had to kind of, be given their natural growth curve. So, guilt is something that plagues 90% of women professionals. And I think in India, 100% of all Indian women professionals, talk about being afflicted with that guilt. Now, for you to say that means that there must have been some very strong uh, prep in your mind and a very clear self awareness of why you are where you are and where you wish to go. that helped you kind of deal with, the guilt or the fact that you were able to say that I'm not feeling guilty about this. So could you tell us maybe one or two instances of what gave you that clarity, which enabled you to remove the guilt from, your perspective?
One of the fun things is when kids are about, and I must say, my husband was very helpful throughout this whole process. But one of the fun things is when I look back and I think of my first memories, the first memories that I have as clear memories of, or where my parents, like I can remember my parents saying or doing
First
something.
memories as a kid, your
As
first
a kid,
memories.
yeah, and as a mother, as a kid, was probably around the age of 5 or 6. Before that, they're fleeting, instances, but the real memories really start around that. And probably around 8 or 10, when I remember having real conversations which influenced who I am. Uh, but funnily, when you become a mother, you start to feel like a 1 month old baby is recognizing that you're abandoning them or something like that. Honestly, they have no memory. And they couldn't care less so long as they're fed and bathed and, toilet changed and all of that. And I don't want to sound heartless, but I do want to recognize and honestly reach out to as many viewers as possible to say a lot of it is social conditioning about what's the right thing to do as a mother, not necessarily what the child needs. And I think businesses talk very beautifully about this, saying work backwards from the customer, build product for the customer. And I'm like, if the baby is the customer here, the baby really needs you at a very different time in their life. They don't necessarily need you in. So yeah, the first 6 months, because you're healing as a mother and you've been through a difficult life change, you probably need to feed the kid. Absolutely, yes. But honestly, after that, the guilt of staying away and going to work, the children couldn't care less. They don't even know. They could have no memory of the event, right?
Oh, this is brilliant. This is just fantastic, Swati. I really hope every young mother who's dealing with those very plaguing feelings of guilt hears what you have to say and really gives themselves a carte blanche on this. So we're very happy to hear you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Swati, I want to ask you a follow-up question to this. You know that Avtar works in the space of second careers for women professionals. And, our calling card is the fact that we introduced this to corporate India and we got many, many, many organizations to sign on to the cause and so on. If you ask women who take large breaks in their career, why they did it, it would be the typical 3 M's: marriage, maternity, and lack of mobility. But when they want to come back and say that, okay, my break period is done, and now I want to kind of, come back with all energy, I find that there is a big hangover of these 3 M's, which, cost them to take that break that kind of continues. And I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong for you to reflect on what happened and which led you to the break or how you actually felt during the break. But I think it's important for us to also let the break be and embrace your new avatar of being somebody who has re-emerged from that. What would you say to women, who are coming back after a break? How do you think they should really, face this new avatar of theirs?
The first thing I will admit is it takes resilience and confidence because, unfortunately, and I wish it were another way, and I really hope that all of us put together will make life better for the next generation. But it is hard because people seem to assume that because you had a baby, you probably lost quarter of your brain or something for a child. So it is the truth, right? And I will be honest that when I was trying to come back to work, there were many people who just about 18 months back were pursuing me for jobs, who were seeking my recommendations if I was not interested, did not want to talk to me because they were like, oh, but you may be not so serious about your career and stuff like that, right? So it is not the most pleasant feeling. It is hurtful and it can get you down. I think the challenge is to not let it impact you or affect how you think of yourself because you know yourself better than anyone else. You know your choices better than anyone else. And yes, it sounds easy, but I've been there. I've been through some really dark days. But my suggestion to everyone is have the confidence. You know what you're made of. The other thing that I learned in my journey, which I really strongly recommend, is really keep your network of friends alive always. I don't think sometimes as women, as we grow in our careers, even early phases, we invest enough time in our networks because we're so busy between work and home and family, even if we don't have kids in the early parts of our career, that we somehow don't prioritize networks. And I think those are important because it is that network which will come into play to help you come back into an active working life. As a country, I think we need to do more for building women networks at workplaces, which then allows women to recommend other women to come back into jobs and into careers and to be supportive. That doesn't mean I don't believe in men as allies. I definitely believe in men as allies. I definitely believe that a lot of men have supported me throughout my career. But overall, just networks is really, really important, whether it's men, women, anyone else. I think it's really, really important to have networks at workplace and in
Fantastic.
your life in general. So
Fabulous.
that helped. That definitely helped me
Super.
to get back to work.
Swati, this podcast is Conversations with the Career Doctor. And, this week's Career Doctor is you. So, my question to you is, as part of this journey of a career, and yours is such an illustrious, such a rich career. And in fact, I remember when you were holding very influential post, as I said, in the NHRD network, you were instrumental in introducing the Diversity Champion Awards. And I remember that we shared the stage during that time. In every organization, people have careers which, peak and then at some point of time, probably plateaus and so on and so forth. Now, in every career, you have those moments where you probably feel that it's not worth it. It's not worth fighting this fight. It's not worth turning up every day. It's not worth putting yourselves through the same grind. And I think it's in those moments that truly a career success is determined. And you don't want to do it, but you still turn up. And that really, decides if you're going to be really great in your career or not. Swati, with regard to your career, what have been those challenges or ailments in your career for which you have been your own career doctor?
Many of them at different points of time. I think early on, it was about choices of how we're going to make sure that, because both of us have careers, how are we going to balance and how are we going to make sure that we're both happy in what we are doing? And some fundamental rules that we've always held for each other. And I think that's helped both of us is that the fact that two of us work should be an advantage and not disadvantage, which means that if one of us needs to step away from work, either because we're not liking it or it's toxic or it's just not something I'm enjoying doing anymore, I should be able to make that decision because we don't have to worry about where the next meal is coming from because the second person is earning. And it doesn't matter who it is at any given point of time, right? And that's where it's a real partnership. And I think that helps because that mindset helps to say, we are in this together. We work to create a better life for both of us and for the family that we have or will have. The second piece, I think, has been whenever things have looked dark and ominous and not so exciting, I've often found that the answers are not in the organization or the environment or the people around me. The answers are within me. The answers are about what I want out of that job at that point of time. And we have a lot of mindsets, again, social conditioning, that careers are about vertical movement only. If I'm not growing every 3 years, my career is over. If I'm coming back from a mat break and I'm not getting a job, which is, two levels above where I was when I left, then it's not worth it at all, right? So a lot of these preconditioned thoughts. And I think one of the biggest anchors of the learning that I have had over time now, and I look back and I'm thinking about this and I say, okay, my first head of HR or CHR kind of a role happened somewhere in 2010. So effectively, I've been doing the same job now for many, many years, right? It's just the organization or the size of organization. So really being able to level that and saying it's really about the quality of work. Are you enjoying what you do? To be able to cut out all the other noise that you have around you and to be able to make those decisions saying if it's not working out, it's as much about me as about the organization. There's a lesson in here about me and what I want at this phase of my life and to be able to make the shift.
Fantastic. Swati, I'm just going to, ask you a slightly pointed question here. See, we often refer to this thing, and my husband uses it quite often during his counseling sessions. We have this thing called the wheel of life, and you have, many spokes in it. You have health, you have career, your family, your finances, you have friends, you have fun. All of these together, create the wheel of life. And for your vehicle to move on an even keel, then all of the wheels need to be kind of balanced. And this is it's an intuitive approach to happiness and feeling, fulfilled more than anything else. Now, I want to ask you, when you talk about a career challenge, and whether it is doing the same thing or it is about wanting two promotions more when you come to another job, or feeling that you've not hit your financial targets right, and so on and so forth. To what extent do you think today's millennials and Gen Zs, who actually have a very programmatic sort of focus towards life, everything in its own neat boxes, and wanting to retire early, wanting to put away money early. So, therefore, really pushing themselves for doing so well at work. Do you think this whole circle of life concept, is it real? Do you apply it in your own life? What do you think would be your thoughts to the Gen Zs and the millennials, who sometimes I feel are slaving so much, over their careers, and probably not having as much fun as probably what I did, taking a bunch of risks, in their age. What are your thoughts about this, Swati?
Uh, I will not claim to be an expert on this, but I'll tell you my the way I live my life, right? Um, I think this concept of balance, it fundamentally I do not understand.
Yeah.
And I'm going back perhaps to answer your question, and I'll come to that. But I have often been asked this question in my life about what one calls as work-life balance, right? And I'm sorry, I'm going to sound really dated when I say it. I do not understand it because my life does not stop when I'm at work, and my work does not stop because I've come home, right? So to me, it's integrated. The question I really ask myself, and Adobe is really great at this, right? I mean, we've got a ton of external validations of the fact that we are one of the best places, flexible places, best places for women, etc. But I think the real issue is when something's really important, which is a life thing, can I step away from work and feel comfortable doing so? And do I know that the ecosystem around me will understand that? And when I'm working terribly hard because there's something I really need to deliver, does my family understand that? And I think those are conversations that as a working woman, I need to have both with my manager and with my family. I mean, even as recent as yesterday, I took my boys for a walk in the park, and we were just walking around. And I just told them I have to go to Delhi on Wednesday, and I'll be out till Friday. And one of them was like, "Hey, but you said you won't travel much in this job. You're traveling all the time." And I was like, "Yeah, but you just told me you wanted 3 new Legos. Who's going to pay for that if I don't travel?" And I feel comfortable having that conversation because it's about setting expectations with that child that, please, you want to live a certain lifestyle, then it comes with this. It doesn't mean I love you less. It means that I'm going to give you all the time you need. I will take you for a walk when I need to. And I have my routines, whether it's, getting up in the morning to wake them up, being there when they turn back from school, all of that. So you figure it out. Now, to your question of the larger circle of life, similarly, I think balance is what you decide in your mind. I wish I was God, but I'm not. So it's this illusion of saying there are 32 spokes in this wheel and all 32 should be perfect is an illusion, right? It's rarely going to be like that. I think the question to ask yourself is, where are you completely out of balance? And in a coaching context, that's really where I would go in, which is to say, where are you completely off balance and how is that impacting everything else in your life, and do you want to fix it? And that's a choice you make. Do you want to or not? Will there be evens and odds at any given point of time in that wheel? Yes, one part of the wheel will be on the ground and it will be getting grinded much more than the wheel portion at the top. And that's just reality.
Superb, superb, Swati. I don't know if you remember the first time we met. It was at the National HRD conference, and you were holding a very, important position there. And it was wonderful for me to see a woman in a typical male bastion. There are many, many wonderful male leaders who've held positions of influence at many of these industry bodies. But for me, it was great to see you hold the position that you did. And when one sees you, one kind of assumes that, all of this came very naturally, and that, you kind of have it all. Are able to handle everything very easily and very naturally. But it's only when one kind of peels the layers of the onion and goes deeper into what each one of us experience that we actually begin to realize that there's a lot of story behind every one of us. And Swati, if you remember, we introduced the NADCA Awards, the NHRD Avtar Diversity Champion Awards. And I still remember how it was awesome when we shared the stage and we called out the winners, and we actually felicitated those organizations and individuals who did amazing work in the space of DEI. Could I ask you, what has got you so passionate about DEI, and what do you really think the purpose of diversity, equity, and inclusion is in the workplace today? I know it's a little off topic with regard to conversations with the career doctor, but having you here, I couldn't but help ask you this question. Over to you, Swati.
Thank you. Thank you for asking that. It's a pet topic, I know, and I appreciate you calling me in on it. So, when I got into DEI, it was a surprise for me, when somebody called me and said, "Would you do DEI work in an organization?" And I was like, "Me?" But but it was the best thing that happened to me, because when I started to do the work, and I had this opportunity to do it across many, many countries, 40 plus countries, and I learned so much about what true diversity, equity, and inclusion really means at workplaces. And I want to use some really good stuff that Adobe is also doing to really bring that point around, right? So the way Adobe also looks at DEI, and that's been my philosophy for a long time, and that's probably why I'm here, is it's Adobe for all. That's really the line that we really talk of, right? It's Adobe for all, creativity for all. Why I say this is because diversity can often be only looked at as representation. And the moment you look at that like that, and you start to have your diversity programs around representation, I think it's a battle lost. The real issue of diversity is really, who are you as an organization? What does your brand stand for? And for us, for example, at Adobe, it's about, are we working with creative professionals to deliver what they want? Are we deeply focused as an organization on building accessibility features in all our products? Are we making sure that creative professionals are part of the journey in building what is really required to service their needs? Now, why does this help? Because then you're suddenly looking at, and when this company was set up, it was set up on a very strong value system at that time, which simply said that good ideas can come from anywhere. And therefore, you have to constantly be listening for good ideas. It is not a privilege of few to have those ideas, right? So therefore, now with that and how we're looking at DEI, we're looking at workforce, which is representation, but also inclusion.
Yeah.
We're looking at workplace, because it is about how your workplace is structured, and does it lend itself to a truly equitous and inclusive workspace? Or are you this organization which even starts with the mindset of cabins are for few, everybody else sits out, and based on your level in the organization, your cubicle size will be determined, right? So workplace plays a very important role in how are you creating creative spaces? Are you encouraging people to think together, meet together, collaborate together? And then there's the ecosystem. How are you thinking of your brand? And are your DEI initiatives, interventions, products, policies business-led or HR-led, right? And in our case, it's business-led. HR just contributes. DEI professionals bring in the expertise, but it is business-led. And the moment you do that, right, and the moment you start talking of DEI in that context, then you have a very different equation. And for all the viewers out there, I'd really request that go back to your organizations and really ask yourself, what is your DEI program about?
Superb. Workforce, workplace, ecosystem. I think these three things really kind of, bring this whole thing together. Wonderful explanation of why you were drawn to DEI and why you think it is so important for all organizations to pursue. Thank you for that, Swati. Swati, I have time for one more question that I'm going to ask you, and then we will get into our rapid fire round. So this kind of last question that I'd like to ask you is, two women who are currently entering the workplace, and this is a generation that is, social media savvy, they're digitally very skilled, they are digital natives. They have actually come into the world where everything is digital and they are very comfortable with it. And they are populating all the workplaces today that you can see. And they are from rural India, they are from urban India, they are from nuclear families, many of them are from joint families. They all have educational backgrounds which are very varied. And then they all come into the workplace, into a company, and it's a leveler. What would you like to tell that young woman who's made that journey, her own unique journey? It could be from somewhere down south, or it could be from the Northeast, and then she has found her way into your organization. What would you like to tell her? She is, in her first job. That's your audience. What would you like to tell her?
I will tell her what I would tell any new hire at Adobe, be it a woman or a man, or someone who is from the LGBTQI community, who's a transgender, who has disability issues, anyone. And I'm not equating women to any of that, but I'm just saying this is advice that I would give any new hire.
Okay.
Is that you're here for a reason, right? You're here for a reason and you have got into this place because you have earned it. Now that you're here, it is for you to look for opportunities to create impact. As you create that impact and as you're starting to create that impact, start to become a little aware of the ecosystem around you. Because if the impact you're creating is creating negative ripples for somebody else, it's going to hurt you as much as it's hurting that person. The hurt to that person may be immediate, the hurt to you may be a little later, but it will come. So please create impact, but create impact which is inclusive, create impact which is sustainable, and create impact which is really creating some value for the customer that you're serving. If you're doing that, don't question saying, how am I appearing? Am I saying the right things? Do I speak the right language? All of that will sort itself out. If you're being yourself, you're taking your confidence that I'm here for a reason and I'm here because I earned it. And I'm creating impact which is appropriate, relevant, and inclusive.
Super, super. Fantastic. Thank you, Swati. We are almost at the end of this conversation today. And I have a few rapid fire questions for you. So, first is night owl or early bird?
Night owl. I am an early bird out of lack of choice because I have kids who go to school, but I prefer to work in the night any day than work in early morning.
Beach person or mountainside?
Totally beach person. I come from Goa. You can't ask me that question. I'm a beach person all through.
Fabulous, fabulous. Self-help books or fiction?
Murder mysteries.
Oh, okay. Fabulous. Big screen movie watching or small screen or TV?
iPad and Kindle these days more often because it's either when you're commuting, and honestly, the content on television isn't something nowadays that you can easily watch with children. So yeah, it's iPad.
It's iPad. Great, super, spoken like a mom. Very, very nice. Okay, and finally, if there was a book that you would write, what would its title be?
Interesting. I haven't thought of it. I haven't thought of writing for a while now. But if I had to, I would probably have saying, live life and have fun.
Oh, great. Super. Thank you so much, Swati. That was an absolutely electrifying conversation. I just loved every word. I think it had something for everybody. While this podcast is aimed at women specifically, and that too mid-career women who are, battling every day with a ton load of different challenges, I think what you said and spoke from your heart characteristically, as always, I think that applied to a whole, lot more audiences than what we conceived of. So thank you so very much, and wishing you amazing decades ahead of creating the impact that you spoke about. Thank you, Swati.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Well, dear viewers, that was Swati Rustagi for you. Vice President Employee Experience at Adobe. And amazing it was to listen to the, not just her journey, but the fact that she had so many powerful nuggets of wisdom that she shared on a variety of different topics. Heal your careers, enjoy them, have fun, and stay tuned to Conversations with the Career Doctor.